What is President Biden's infrastructure plan? What's it all about? What does it involve? Does it involve the green economy? I have with me today on the Bo Knows Who is Changing the World podcast, appropriate for this gentleman, the president of Sustainable PR, a public relations agency based up here in Glens Falls, New York, beautiful country, beautiful North Country. And he's dedicated to saving too, the needs of companies with an emphasis on sustainability. Welcome, Tony.
Chris, it's my pleasure to be here. I've heard great things about your program. I'm delighted to be able to share our story and talk a little bit about the sustainability market.
Tell us about what you do exactly at Sustainable PR.
Sure. So Sustainable PR is a public relations agency built from the ground up to serve the needs of quickly growing companies with a mission in sustainability. And when I say a mission, what that means is these are innovators, pioneers in high tech, low tech, and in some cases, no tech, that all share the same common denominator, which is that they understand that we are on a ticking clock with respect to climate. And from companies that are building databases that provide all the food ingredients, for instance, that manufacturers can quickly sort through to determine how to make new products that are sustainable, right, to online e-commerce stores that provide an eco-index for consumers like you and me, right, to make educated choices that will have a minimal impact on the environment. And so we're working with all sorts of companies that are helping to shape, mold, and grow the green economy, while also helping to reduce our impact on the planet.
I understand. Let's get to basics for a second. What exactly is the green economy? Can you explain that in a layman sort of a way?
When you look at the industrialization of America at the turn of the century, or leading up to the turn of the century,
right,
all of our manufacturing base was built on production of material goods, whether it was new cars, carriages, textiles, and there was never any consideration for the impact of the environment. Here in the Adirondacks, one of the biggest issues that the Adirondacks ever faced was first the explosion of the timber industry, which then supplied building materials for the explosion of residential housing, but also had an enormously negative impact on the environment and the Adirondack Park in particular. The green economy is about building and advancing our economy with a degree of consciousness about what are we making and what type of legacy does it leave for other generations, so that whether you're talking about a carbon sequestration, where it's technologies that reduce CO2 emissions, really it's everything. And the one term that I hear consistently with companies that we talk to, that we will be representing, is this notion of a full life cycle of a product. Okay. In the Industrial Revolution, there was never a consideration the full life cycle of product. When it was done, you threw it away, you put it in a landfill, and that's how we had the degradation of the planet. The life cycle of products now in the green economy are designed to take less away than you leave. Okay, that's the fundamental definition of sustainability.
All right, that sounds fascinating. I've never heard it put quite that way, Tony. So that was kind of a layman's, I'm learning about this too, myself and some of the terms, and I love it. We just had Earth Day recently as of this recording. I just have to give you kudos for what happened on the Crandall Library grounds there in Glens Falls, where the children came and drew all their little messages about saving the planet and all that. So that was fascinating to see.
I appreciate you mentioning that, Chris, and the fact that you came out. And if I may, I'd just like to make a very brief comment about that. Is we obviously, as PR people, we look at calendar events that are coming up to find ways to get our clients exposure in the media. And with Earth Day coming around the corner, we just felt an obligation as a PR agency exclusively designed and focused on supporting companies in the green economy that we wanted to do something to give back to the community of Glens Falls, and coming up with that art exhibit where young folks could come out with their parents and write expressions of hope on a public blackboard. We got over 50 people that came out to that event, that wrote on the boards. And we, based upon that success, we're going to carry that campaign to schools around the area and let students at various elementary schools engage these boards. And we think it's a great idea that has legs.
I think it does too, because the earlier you teach the kids, the more they're likely they are to carry it through their lives and maybe influence others who don't get the same education. Hey, there might be something to that. I want the earth to be around in 50, 60 years, where it's not, because you see all these sci-fi movies where everything is a disaster and all that. And a lot of that is fantasy, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing that we do have to get this under control. I mean, the emissions and things like that. I'm talking in general terms, but
Sure.
I'm sure you'll agree with that.
And Chris, there's, for your listeners and viewers, there's a real practical example. And this is not to toot or promote a product because I don't represent this company. But one of the first companies that made an impact in the green economy was called Seventh Generation. And if you go to your grocery store, it's hard not to see their products. They have dishwashing liquid. They have all sorts of cleansers that are all organically based ingredients, green plants that they use. And they were one of the first companies to establish a national brand recognition. And now they're almost, like a household, well-known brand. But where they got that name is really interesting, and it speaks to what we're talking about today, I think. Seventh generation is a term that comes from an Indian tribe that said, from 7 generations from where you are now, you need to think forward about your impact on the environment and their quality of life.
Right.
So I love the fact that that company basically, ran with that phrase and used it as their brand. I don't know if they had to give any licensing rights, but
Wow. I love it. I love the story of that for sure. Now, you were telling me before we started the show here about President Biden's infrastructure plan and how that is affecting the green economy. And first of all, tell us I'm not familiar with all of it. I'm familiar with the basic idea, but what is his infrastructure plan and what is the green economy component of that?
Well, it's a great question. Part of it is political. I haven't been able to get to the bottom of all of the elements, but I'll give it to you in broad strokes, which is that President Biden, having come from working class roots in Scranton, Pennsylvania, has centered his public policy initiatives on building back the middle class. Okay. Now, when we say infrastructure, it has historically meant build bridges, build roads, build or improve your sewer systems. All of these things are part of this plan, and in my opinion, critical to the long-term health and well-being of our country. You just can drive over any road in the North Country and you're going to, run into potholes. Go down Route 88 towards Oneonta, forget about it. You got to watch your wheels. However, President Biden also recognizes that the future of American competitiveness has to do with a clean economy driven by cutting edge technology. So I believe it's just over $1 trillion of his infrastructure plan is earmarked, if you will, for clean technology. So what are we talking about? Massive battery plants that will power lithium ion batteries. We're talking about probably an exponential growth in solar panels.
Okay.
Here again, these are just companies I come into contact with, but Apex Solar Power and Roofing, which is based locally in Glens Falls, is doing great.
That's a wide and well received initiative too, isn't it, by a lot of people?
Yeah, I mean, in Washington, this bill is going to get hacked up, and as I indicated earlier, there's going to be a compromise from a policy standpoint.
Sure.
But the Republicans are criticizing it because it has a big investment in green technology. It's just the president's view, whether you agree or disagree. I happen to agree that part of this infrastructure needs to be a a public investment, whether it's incentives, whether it's direct investment in employment, in retraining folks who might be furloughed as a result of the economy from older industrial jobs
Right.
into high-tech, high-paying jobs that are going to drive technology that helps reduce climate impact.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I might cite the recent shutting down, not recent anymore, of that pipeline coming from Canada. And
Yeah.
that's a direct example of workers that, and it laid off a lot of workers. And there are a lot of them they're probably in unemployment now looking for work. But some of this initiative would be able to retrain these workers, if I'm hearing you correctly, right? And
Yes, that's right.
to get them into a new thing. Now, there's going to be some resistance, and that, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be some, but the whole the basic idea is good to further the lesson. I'm saying the impact on the environment. I'm saying that kind of long-winded.
Right. I mean, if you remember, Chris, even if we just read our history books, President Eisenhower made a big public policy initiative and commitment to building the nation's highways. Okay, that was the first big public infrastructure initiative. Right. And that's where all of America's superhighways came into being. The explosion of suburban growth, where folks were coming out of the cities and they were establishing the Levittowns of the world, from where I'm originally from in Pennsylvania, mm-hmm. and these suburban communities. That was a government-led initiative. Uh-huh. And that employed literally thousands of laborers to build those highways. All we're talking about here, it seems to me, is a different type of infrastructure initiative for a cleaner economy.
I got you. Well, that sounds awesome. I mean, that's just the word, right? I mean, for this, and we just hope it goes through. You are, Sustainable PR is a media relations firm. Now, tell me exactly, if you can, in your words, what exactly you media relate. I'm getting real basic here. So how do you promote the ideas that you have?
Yeah, so Chris, great question. In marketing communications, you have a couple buckets. And this might be a good way to explain it. It's paid, okay? Paid media is where companies and organizations have a budget to pay for advertising or event sponsorship like trade shows. And then they get to control all of the media, the communication, and the content that they want to reach their audience. Then there's owned media. Owned media are the type of things that organizations control that are their own products, like their website, their blog, their e-newsletter, right, and so forth. We deal and have expertise in the third category, earned media, which is what we have known for years as media relations, principally focuses on storytelling and engagement with independent sources of communication. So we're talking about journalists, we're talking about podcasters such as yourself, right, influencers who, by virtue of their expertise and their years of industry training, take an independent point of view to reviewing products and services. And when they write or air a program, it is perceived to be more credible in the eyes of the consumer and the marketplace, because it is understood that the company did not buy the access necessarily to get that story told. That's what we do. We use our relationships with media contacts nationally, regionally, and locally to get our clients' stories told through their devices. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We write press releases and distribute press releases. I think you've been on the receiving end of one or two. Yeah. We do media tours where we'll take clients to New York City and do, this is pre-COVID, obviously, do desk side meetings with editors. Mm-hmm. And then we do remote broadcast interviews similar to what I'm doing with you, where our client can talk to media directly over a video conference like this.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So and how long have you been with Sustainable PR?
Well, Sustainable PR, Chris, was founded in 2020. So the company is very young. Before that, I had built another company under my name, DeFazio Communications. Right. And that company is still operating with a full team and a full suite of clients in it. But where I am in my career, Chris, is I wanted to leave a positive, lasting positive impact with the skill sets and the relationships that I have in the media. And I've always had this passion for the outdoors. You know, I'm working on being a 46er. I've been coming to the Adirondacks for 30 years. And I've just always had a fascination with ecology and the environment. And I said, you know what? That last leg of my career, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to combine my skills in media relations and PR with my passion for the environment. And by helping companies do well, we will help the planet do well as well.
That is a sound bite right there.
Well, thank you.
That was a sound bite, and we're going to treat it as such too. Now, talk about for a second. Let's get a little bit personal, but not too much. What got you into thinking? It originally motivated you to go into this sort of work, this sort of public relations work. How did that work through in your brain when you were younger?
Oh, great question, and one I love to answer. I felt early on as a kid, and this may sound strange, but I had two skill sets. One was I was very good with diplomacy, and I could remember breaking up fights on schoolyard grounds and getting guys to respect each other, even though they were pissed off or had, you know, very different opinions of the situation at hand. And then the other skill set was I just seemed to have a way with words, and I could say things at the right time to get people to react positively.
Okay.
And so when I, progressing through high school, college, by the time I was in my sophomore year of college, I was thinking, I'm either going into politics, I'm going to use the diplomatic skills that I have and my people skills, or I'm going to go into PR and use the sales skills.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I did a little combination of both. Initially, I went to Washington after graduating from Ithaca College, another great New York school. Then I came back to Philadelphia, where I'm from. I joined a startup PR agency. I was the second hire. I became the first initial partner with the founder of the company. What I found was media relations really requires you to read the reception of reporters when you engage them. Positively, negatively, or neutral, you will get a response. And I had this ability to read them well and then find a way to encourage them to cover my clients.
Okay.
And so my first job in a PR agency, I was representing a restaurateur who had a turkey sandwich and salad franchise. I was sending a media kit. This is pre-internet, dating me here a bit, but I sent a media kit to Fortune magazine, and it was the small business reporter covering franchises. And I got him to write a column on the expansion of this turkey franchise.
Oh, okay.
And it was like the second month that I was on the job. And I think that's when I knew that I was going to be good at media relations.
Wow.
And the ability to tell a story, the ability to read the other person and their reception and reaction to the story and figure out a way to build a bridge and to get the buy-in, if you will, to cover clients. So I've been doing that, Chris, for 30 years.
Wow.
It included being a partner of that first agency, which went on to become, after 13 years that I worked there, one of the largest on the East Coast.
Wow.
And then I worked briefly in-house for a publicly traded real estate company, as what we call a REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust.
Okay.
And that was a nice experience. I worked with the capital markets, so working on Wall Street and working with analysts and investors and very sophisticated board of directors.
Right.
And then when the financial collapse in 2008 occurred, I then went out on my own. And I felt I had the experience, I had the network of contacts, and very quickly I was able to start building a nice portfolio of work.
There comes a time when you just know it's time to work for yourself.
That's right.
Which is what I did at a very late in life, but
there you go.
Everybody's different. Tony, we could talk forever on this.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have you on again at some point to do some follow-up on events that are current at the time, maybe in a couple of months or something. Maybe I can get you and Amy Ryan to come on together, and
Love
that would be a great discussion with all three of us. But I want to ask you a couple of non-business type questions.
Okay.
What's your favorite movie?
Oh, tough one. I would say it is split between Goodfellas and Lawrence of Arabia.
Okay. Two great choices. If you had a time machine, such as this TARDIS from Doctor Who,
Sure.
or Marty McFly's DeLorean, and you could go back in time and talk to anybody, and there's not around anymore,
Right.
famous, non-famous, relative, anything, who would you choose? Who do you think? And you can only talk to one.
Ooh.
On the spot.
Yeah. I would say, now this presumes that they're no longer with us. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The two big inspirations in my life as a communicator and as a student of world affairs, I guess, would be John F. Kennedy,
right,
and or Dr. Martin Luther King.
Oh, both.
If I could sit down with either one of them, I would pepper them with so many questions, having read their books and studied their careers and the impacts that they each respectively have had to shape America.
Right.
That would be phenomenal. That would just be amazing.
Yes. Two wonderfully great answers. Tony DeFazio, President of Sustainable PR, based in Glens Falls, New York. Thank you for your time today. It was very enlightening, and I learned a few things, and that's what it's all about, teaching the public and making people aware. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, and live long and prosper, as Mr. Spock would say.
Awesome.